Okay, wonderful. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this Thursday. My name is Shelby Toth, and I am the training coordinator here at JPIA. On behalf of JPIA, we'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Risk Transfer Insurance Requirements and Contracts. Today's session is presented by Nydia Watkins and Amber Anderson, who are our lovely JPIA member services representatives, and we are so glad to have them here with us today. Please note that this session is being recorded. A copy of the recording and all PDF handouts will be sent to all participants post-session. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to review a few Zoom features that we will be using in today's training to make sure our time together is successful. Please remain on mute throughout the presentation. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to enter them into the chat. If you are needing to mute or unmute yourself for any reason, you can do so by clicking the microphone icon located at the bottom left corner of your screen. You'll also see reminders in the chat here shortly to download the session handouts that are available in PDF format. Um, you can send us myself a direct message through the Zoom chat feature, or you can email us at training@aquajpia.com. If you are missing any materials, you can't download the materials, whichever it may be, please feel free to reach out. If you are viewing as a group, please designate one person to type responses into the chat on behalf of your group. And please note that there will be, you will all need to have each a copy of the packet. Um, Please be sure to fill in the following sign-in sheet that I will be attaching here shortly into the chat to record each attendee's participation and submit immediately after the webinar to training@aquajpia.com. We will be answering Q&A questions during the end of the presentation. In the meantime, as I mentioned earlier, please feel free to submit your questions or comments into the chat, and we will address them as in the order they are received. And please be sure your chat is set to everyone before sending in your questions or comments. To chat with everyone or send a direct message to myself if you are experiencing any technical difficulties, you can click the chat icon in the meeting controls and select, you can use the two drop down in the chat panel and select everyone in meeting. Let me see. To get us started, please select everyone in your chat and tell us which district or location you are calling in from. We'd love to hear where you're calling in from. Let's see. Zone 7 Water Agency. Wonderful. Thank you, Mona. Let's see. Zone 7 as well. Great. Tahoe City, PUD, Noche Water District, Tahoe City, Carmichael Water, Zone 7, Zone 7. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. Great. Thank you. Okay. Now I'd like to introduce today's instructors, Nydia Watkins and Amber Anderson, member services representatives here at JPIA. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Nydia and Amber, and you can begin when you're ready.
Great. Thank you so much, Shelby. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you. I keep seeing more and more names and districts coming up, and a lot of familiar faces, or names anyway. I can't see the faces. But I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Nydia Watkins. I've been with the JPIA for the last 18 plus years, and I am counting. And before JPIA, I was an insurance broker with servicing small contractors in the Sacramento area. So I've been on the other side of what we are going to study today, risk transfer, meaning I was providing the coverage to satisfy the insurance requirements for the contractors who are working for different agencies, water agencies or others. So with that, I do want to introduce, well, the thing is I've been tasked with in the JPIA to learn and to educate our members regarding insurance requirements and contracts. And I've been doing this since like 2013 or even before that. And I'm proud that our agencies are taking the time to learn and to make sure that they're doing the right best practices. So I also want to introduce Amber Anderson. She's new to the JPIA. It's been a whole 6 months. And Amber, would you give your background as well?
Sure. Hi, Amber Anderson. Like Nydia said, 6 months with the JPIA, but about 20 years in pooling, specifically with California agencies. Yeah, I have a background starting out in the Sacramento area working with special districts, and over the years have moved around and done a bunch of different stuff. But happy to be joining Nydia on the team, doing member services with the JPIA. I'm already seeing some familiar names as well. So really excited to be doing my first training with you guys today.
It's great. I'm glad to have a partner, Amber. So let me share. I'll share my slides, right? Screen number 2. Okay. All right, you're seeing my screen?
Yes, it's loading. There we are. Looks great. Good to go.
Okay, great. So again, this is risk transfer, insurance requirements and contracts. And we do want to know a little bit about you at the district. Type in, chat into your chat what your role is with insurance contracts, contractors. Do you draft agreements? So we'd like to know who's out there. Are you here only to get credit for the professional development program? That's great. We love having you here. And if you don't know what the professional development program is, uh, the JPIA training department, the education department would be glad to walk you through that. It's a great program that many of our members have taken advantage of. So let's take a look at the chat. I already lost my chat here.
That is okay. That's why I'm here. Yes, so I'm seeing Vivian saying HR/risk analyst,
Great.
Andrew, accounting manager. Thank you so much, Vivian and Andrew.
So tell me, do you draft contracts or do you verify coverage?
Okay,
Kurt Williams
let
saying
me
does
see.
draft it.
Mhm,
Great.
mhm.
Construction contracts bids, wonderful. We'll be touching upon several of those. Preparing contracts, that's great. So this course is really going to concentrate on an introduction to the risk management process. And we will be looking at risk transfer, how we establish risk transfer, why it's important. And then we'll touch a little bit upon verification of coverage. And I'm not seeing a lot of people say verification, but I'm sure that with drafting the contracts comes the verification, right? Do you have the correct coverage? And then we're going to share all sorts of resources with you on our website and outside the website. So, just a little overview. Oh, good. And Corey Allison does do verifications. Very good. So I do have another course that we've taught in the past. It is called the Verification of Coverage, Risk Transfer number 2, part number 2. That one we will probably be doing again this year, but it's very interesting that, we could do another 2 hours of just what are we looking at once we, of, draft that contract and get the coverages in. So again, we'll be doing questions and answers in the end. And so please, if you have questions during the presentation, please chat them in, and Amber and Shelby will be, stop me, and we'll be glad to, maybe answer them along the way, or definitely at the end, if we have time, we'll let you unmute yourself and you can ask specific questions. So welcome aboard. Let's move on. So really what the gist of this presentation is so that we may preserve the assets of the agency. And what that means is the less risk that your agency has, the less risk to the agency's budget. That's why we're here. We want to make sure that we're doing the best practices in order to preserve the district's assets and its employees, and hopefully not have to use your insurance coverage at JPIA. So speaking about the JPIA, we are a risk-sharing pool. We are not an insurance company. And I need to say that over and over. We're not an insurance company, not an insurance company. We are a partnership with you, our members, and we share in losses, in claims, and in expenses so that we keep costs down. That's our mission, is to keep costs of coverage down. We do provide all the members coverages, liability, property, workers' comp, and employee benefits, of course. We've been here over 40 years. I think now we're 45 years almost. And we represent about 400 members, over 80% of ACWA's membership. So, we are very much, we were created by ACWA, so our members must be a part of ACWA to be a part of ACWA JPIA. And we have been accredited with excellence from CJPA. That is the California Association of Joint Powers Association. And they have a program in which they review joint powers authorities. And there's about 150 of us in just California. And they make sure that we're doing the best practices to be a joint power. So we're not just out there saying, hey, we've got all this experience. We have an independent agency coming in and looking at all our processes and saying, you are accredited with excellence. So now we go into the what and why of risk management. So many of you are risk managers, you're engineers or accounting, or your roles at the agencies make you need to manage the risk of the agency. So this is a continual process that you are evaluating, identifying, analyzing, evaluating your exposures in order to minimize the effects of losses, right? Financial security. And then again, to protect our assets. So that when you are doing your job, you're doing a great job. We want you to preserve your assets and be successful for your position. And if Murphy's Law comes in where something goes wrong with one of your projects or even just operational, you'll be able to know that you've done the right thing by following the correct risk management processes. And then when you hire someone, to make sure you're contractually passing on that risk to the person who's responsible. And again, bottom line, the less risk exposure you have, the less risk to the agency budget. Because when accidents happen, and they will, and losses occur, really no one wants to take responsibility, right? Everybody says, it's your fault, I didn't do that. And no one wants to pay. The contractor doesn't want to pay, the insurance company doesn't want to pay, and definitely the member doesn't want to pay, because you are a steward of public funds and you need to make sure that you are responsible for administering and correctly using your budgets for your water infrastructure, which is your true business. So, but what happens? No one wants to take responsibility, no one wants to pay, but everybody sues and everyone files lawsuits, and the agency will be involved in lawsuits. So that's what we partner with you. The JPIA does want to be your partner and help you to control those losses. And if we need to, we do need to pay, right? Because that's ultimately, we have to take responsibility if there is something that we or the members have caused. Okay, so what is risk? Again, risk is the possibility or chance of loss or danger. It's that Murphy's Law. When things will happen, they may happen at the worst possible time, right? So chat in some of the risk, operational risks that you can think of that the agencies face. Could be something that you could transfer in a contract, or just that your agency has risk, and how do you that you can manage. If you can chat in, let's take a look. Feel free to let me know who's chatting in.
Yes, I will. I
Shelby,
haven't
yeah,
received, here we go, from Justin,
another
hitting another,
okay, great.
and then
Hitting another
Dylan,
utility. Uh-huh, go ahead.
yes, having an underground storage tank on site. Mhm,
Yeah, those are risks,
mhm.
third
Uh,
parties.
mhm.
And the hot topic of the last couple of years has been cyber, right? Cyber liability, being responsible for any leaks in data or taking over your networks. Construction phase, yeah. Hosting special events, yes. Thank you, Kurt. Good one. Okay. One of the other ones I think of is water quality, right? And injuries, employee injuries. So we want to make sure we're preserving our employees' health and well-being, right? And our assets. Can someone else cause uh, losses at our facilities while they're hosting their board meetings? Or, we have some members that rent facilities for weddings. So all of that, we want to preserve the physical and human assets so that we can continue to operate, right? So here's a little wheel that is often is risk management 101, where we're identifying our exposures, we're evaluating the loss potential, we're selecting the right risk control, and then we're implementing techniques. Then we monitor the results, right? And we modify those techniques by experience, and then we start all over again in this wheel. So for this purpose, for this course, we are going to really focus on selecting the right risk control. We're controlling our risk by either avoiding, right? That's why we go out and hire a contractor, or we accept the risk, right? Some agencies actually do go out and construct their pipelines, and so we're accepting that risk of injury or a loss while we're putting in infrastructure. And then we're also going to be reducing our risk. And the way we do this is we either transfer the risk to a contractor that can handle that risk, or we purchase insurance for that risk, right? If we're building a building, we're going to purchase builder's risk coverage in order to protect that asset in case there's a fire or a theft. And then, of course, we're doing contractual risk transfer. This is what we're concentrating on today. So I realized I didn't give you an example of why the JPIA has been so active in educating our members for risk transfer. We've had members that have gone awry or have not realized that you needed to have agreements in place. So a perfect example of a loss, of actual loss that the JPIA has on its books, is one of our agencies hired a contractor with a handshake. Hey, we've done business before. Let's just go ahead and do this project. It's going to be a 1 day. We're painting a tank outside of one of our facilities. So this is a large, several stories tank. The contractor went out there. They had used him before, was going to spray this tank with paint. And lo and behold, it happened to be a windy day. So this contractor's out there painting away and didn't notice, or noticed but didn't think it was that big of a deal. There was an overspray, and it actually affected the next door, the neighboring parking lot. of the agency. So now we have it, not employees, but the third party, the other parking lot, cars were oversprayed with this spray of this contractor. So unfortunately, because we didn't have a contract, we didn't have any indemnification or insurance requirements in this contract. Um, the contractor didn't take responsibility. The contractor's insurance company didn't take responsibility because they're like, well, you didn't tell us you were doing this job. And so the JPIA had multiple claims to fix these vehicles because there was an overspray, something that could have been avoided. Maybe we don't spray on a windy day, or we did advance notice to this neighboring parking lot so that the employees wouldn't have parked their cars so close. So hindsight is 2020, right? But this is why we want to make sure that we are all on the same page with doing risk transfer. So bottom line with that example with the overspray is the smallest of contracts, the smallest of risks that you think is out there can cause large losses to the agency. And then you have to sit in front of your board and say, yeah, we didn't follow the best practices for this particular contract, and now it's costing us a certain amount. Okay, so let's move on. I don't see. Okay. So here's challenge number 1. Risk transfer is cumbersome and difficult. Our district is better off just using contractors we've known for a long time and continue just with a handshake. True or false?
Okay, I am looking in the chat. It looks false. We have few false. Okay, false on all ends. There we are. Thank you
Ding,
all.
ding, ding, ding. Correct, correct. The answer is false. It might be cumbersome and difficult, however, it's worthwhile, especially like I said, you don't want to be in front of your board having to explain why now you have this loss or why now your contributions here at the JPIA are going to increase because you've had some losses. So let's continue. Okay. So here's some risk transfer considerations. So what we want you to do is to kind of step back even before you have to go out and hire that contractor. We want you to understand the goals of the project, to identify those risks, right? This sounds like Risk Management 101. We want you to assess the maximum probable loss. What's going to happen? And then how we mitigate those losses is by using the contractual obligation with hold harmless and indemnification clauses and proper insurance coverage. So it seems easy to me because this is what I do all the time, but I understand some of these concepts are not tangible. And so we will examine those here. So let's look at the goals of the project. We want to make sure that we understand, is there other risks that we're not thinking of? Like I said, with that parking lot example, did we know that there was an adjacent parking lot? Or, do we assess what the maximum loss amount would be? Many of our agencies do pipeline installation, which is very, very risky because you're opening up the roads, you're having to maybe manage traffic. So that can, right there, just managing the traffic you can imagine what's the maximum probable loss. Well, let's do the classic. What if it's a school bus driving along and the traffic control isn't right? And so now you have an accident and injuries. Heaven forbid it's a school bus full of kids. So when we look at maximum probable loss, I mean, that's very extreme, but it's possible, right? And with Murphy's Law around where things are going to happen, we want to make sure that we've actually thought about it outside of just our contract. So why do we have these provisions that we want to make sure that you include in a contract? So we're going to allocate equally between the parties, what the responsibility, and really have the contractor who's in charge of your project, controlling the project, be the one responsible. So we're not putting extra on them. We're putting what they're responsible for. And then hopefully we're going to avoid those costly claims. So here's another way to look at how we wanted to know your exposure. This is a great illustration of what lies beneath. We want to make sure we remember and assess and realize that we have sufficient indemnification and insurance to cover those losses. So we're going to evaluate the risk. We're going to make sure, is it dangerous? Is it pollution? Are there crowds? Who could be harmed? Like I said, the classic example is those children on that bus. We want to make sure that we've thought about that ahead of time. And right now, I'm getting ahead of myself, but again, we just want to make sure that we're thinking of everything and not just looking at the surface. We're cleaning that tank or we're painting that tank, but what did we miss? So here are 3 elements of how we do risk transfer. It's kind of like a stool that needs all 3 legs to hold it together. So number 1, we need a written contract. It needs to be in writing. Insurance companies are going to look at that. The contractor's insurance company is going to look at your contract to make sure that you've outlined what is the scope of the contract. Are there provisions in there that indemnify the district? That means the hold harmless indemnification of the district. And then is there a financial backing to that indemnification, which is the insurance requirements? The JPIA, because we've actually run into several of these losses that when we investigate, maybe there's not a proper written contract or there's a contract, but there's no mention of indemnification. The JPIA has actually limited the coverage that our members get, not as a punishment, but as an encouraging for you to go ahead and draft these contracts with indemnification and insurance. So what we do is the memorandum of coverage for liability now has what's called a sublimit. So if you happen to, by chance, not have a contract or not have the provisions within your contract, the coverage for the JPIA for the districts is now sublimited to that contractor's coverage. So if they only had $1 million, the JPIA will only be responsible for $1 million of any, when the district is deemed legally liable, of course. So this is what we're trying to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay, so what types of contracts are we talking about? When is it that we're asking you to make sure that you have a contract in place? So for any vendor agreements, you should have a contract. Any cooperative services agreements, maybe with other agencies, you're doing an emergency contract for making sure that you have those services available to you. Again, facilities use agreement, whenever anyone's asking to use your facility, we want to make sure that you have that in place. And then IT vendor contracts. Like I said, cyber has now become a hot topic. And we're all constantly wanting to be training on that. And so we want to make sure our vendors have the appropriate coverage as well. And what about purchase orders? Do you think that purchase orders are actually a contract? Anybody use purchase orders? Chat in. Tell me, do you think a purchase order is a contract?
I'm seeing yes in the chat.
Good.
3 yeses, 4 yeses. Thank you all.
A bunch of yeses.
Wonderful. Okay.
So
Yep.
yes, absolutely. Purchase orders, we want to make sure that those also have some kind of a indemnification and insurance requirements within the purchase order that the vendor signs and provides the services. Right here, I did put in there, contract value has no impact on the exposure to the district. Remember that classic example, the tank that's being painted. Low, low cost on that contract, but still it did cause a large exposure to the district and to the JPIA, right? Now we had to mitigate several claims. There was about 20 or 30 vehicles that were damaged. So each one of those is a claimant that now adds expenses to the JPIA, and then ultimately to our member agencies, because we're all partners, remember? We all share in costs. Okay, so now we are going to dive a little deeper into what is the concept of hold harmless and indemnification. So these are legal ramifications. This is within the contract. It's a legal obligation for the contractor to take responsibility for their negligence. You think that, oh yeah, they do take responsibility. Well, no, remember, everybody points the fingers. So with the concept of hold harmless, that person agrees to indemnify the district in the event of a claim. And the claim should be arising out of the performance, right? Or the product that is being contracted. So we agree on the indemnification before working on the insurance requirements. So here is how it works. Start by selecting or negotiating the indemnification language and then move to the insurance support. So when we say select and negotiate, that sounds kind of like attorney speak, and it is. We do want you to get your legal counsel involved when you're drafting these agreements. It's okay to have templates on file that say you always hire a service contractor to go service your meters. It's okay to have a template. However, please review those templates with your legal counsel. We have models for you that have been vetted and drafted with what we feel is the best practice, but we're not attorneys either. So please make sure your legal counsel is involved in helping you draft these agreements. So the insurance is the collateral for the indemnification. It does ensure that the funds are available to back up those indemnity provisions. And the reason we say you need to select the right one, the right types of indemnification, is because there's different ones. So here are three main types of indemnification. And this is legal language within your contract. So for most contracts, and we have a model for you that has this language, the contractor indemnifies the districts for all claims arising out of the project, except we can't have them take responsibility for the district's sole negligence, something you do on your own, or for obviously any willful misconduct. So your contract needs to say this. And there's actually legislation that that has passed here in the state of California that says that if you pass on your sole or active negligence in the construction contracts, that it's not going to be valid. So make sure you're looking at your indemnification within your contracts and that it has these key words that kind of underlined here. So for construction, the contractor indemnifies the district except for its sole or active negligence or willful misconduct. And then there's a limited form. Again, this is actually driven by state legislature and some engineering, what do you call it, political actions. So the limited form says that the contractor will only be responsible for their own negligence to the extent that they caused it. So that says that you have to prove who did the deed, right? And when you have to go prove something, you're going to court to prove that somebody whose fault it is. So this is why it's important everything has expenses, right? It's important to make sure that you have the correct type of language in your contract. So further, here's a sample of this language, and this is for design professionals. Like I said, they've gone with their political action committees and had legislation passed because they didn't want to take on everyone's negligence, not the districts, not other contractors on the site. So this is the language that is actually by state statute that needs to be in your contract whenever you're hiring design professionals. So they are going to only be responsible for their negligence, recklessness, and willful misconduct. So I know that this is a lot of legal language. And like I said, it's best to have your legal counsel involved. But I want to bring it up to your attention because it's important. It's important to know you can't just pick your old template that you've been using for a long time and use it for any of your contracts. You need to have some designated templates for different types of contracts. And don't worry, we've helped you. We've figured some of these out for you. So who are the design professionals? These are licensed architects, landscape architects, professional engineers, professional land surveyors. So it's not all your professionals. It's only these four that have actually gone to the legislation and gotten their own indemnification within their contract. So let's see if you've been paying attention. Here's a challenge. Challenge number 2. What is the goal of contractual risk allocation? Is it A, to determine which party buys the insurance coverage? Is it B, to strive for equitable allocation of the risks? C, to push as much risk onto the other party? Or D, to hire the right contractor for the job? What does our chat say? Everybody's saying C.
I have
Oh, I have
one B.
a couple B's.
Mhm.
Question mark, B question mark.
Now I'm getting a lot more B's I'm seeing. So thank you all.
Good. So yes, the answer is B. The goal should be to allocate the risk to the party that is in the best position to control the risk. And that they have the financial ability to bear that risk. Right? So this is probably a good segue for to tell you of when something went bad. So I did a podcast last year, or maybe it's been 2 years ago now, for risk transfer with one of our defense counsels. His name is Walt Wendelstein. And he had a great example of when something went wrong and having to allocate that risk. So this is a great example because it's kind of visually very, very good. So there was a county out there having a contractor drill for probably installing infrastructure, whether it be lights or pipeline. So they had a contractor with a very large drill drilling, and they didn't call dig alert, right? And they dug and hit a line for telecommunications. So everybody's not cyber, but yeah, communications, internet, telephone, all came up in this big drill. So literally, he said there was pictures of the drill with the pipeline or the pipe of wires all entangled in there. So no question about who was responsible, right? The driller should have known not to dig as far or dig, a little bit further from that big pipeline. But it worked for the county at that point because that contractor had proper insurance contract and insurance backing for the county, and the county was actually defended by that contractor's insurance company. So that's a perfect way to know that we want to allocate equally to whoever's responsible. In that part, it was they them being responsible. So here is a great success story within the JPIA This is Sweetwater Authority. It's a great agency in the San Diego area. The authority rented a vacant land to a construction company for staging. So it wasn't even their project. The agency was not hiring this contractor. They just let them use some land. So they did an agreement. They had indemnification and insurance requirements. They know what they're doing down at Sweetwater. And unfortunately, here's Murphy's Law. Something went wrong. A dump truck was backing out and hit a 17-year-old who was riding his skateboard. The 17-year-old was okay, but obviously had a lot of injuries. That's a big hit. And immediately there was lawsuits, and the district was, or the authority was pulled into this because it was their land. So the settlement came in at $5 million. The good news is that the insurance company for the contractor did provide the defense of the authority, the defense and indemnification. That means they paid the settlement. And the JPIA and Sweetwater Authority did not have any expenses going towards that. So this was a good successful risk transfer example. So again, I'm kind of getting to the middle of our of our slides here, and I think that this is, well, I'll go ahead and do this slide, and then I'll let Amber kind of take over for about 20 minutes, and then we'll take a break. But just always know we are public entities, right? We are always viewed as the deep pocket, especially in Southern California. It's one of the largest, highest verdicts in the regions. And when an occurrence happens, when a claim happens, the contract, the insurance requirements, the supporting documents, that verification, they become crucial. That is your evidence to show that you've done your job well and that you've done the best practice. Again, we don't want you to sit in front of the board and have to explain why the district doesn't have the documentation. So that's why we're here, and we want to partner with you and come alongside you. So Amber, do you want to continue?
Sure. Let's talk about another exciting topic, minimum insurance specifications. This is something Nydia and I talk about with our membership every single day. And it's something that changes over time. So, right now, our recommendation for commercial general liability is 2 million limits per occurrence and in the aggregate, except for construction projects. The last example Nydia provided being a good one, that 5 million is there for a reason for those higher value, higher risk projects. Nydia mentioned Walt Wendelstein, a defense counsel that we reference a lot, he always suggests asking your contractor what limits are carried. And if it's above that, then we'll take that, right? Another reference that we use is the insurance requirements and contracts manual. It's something that if you speak with Nydia and I about, we will reference a lot because it's kind of like the Bible of the insurance industry. And we talk a lot about how 1 million used to be the standard. We still see people going for the 1 million pretty often. So it's something that comes up a lot that we explain has been the standard since 1980. And so when people kind of balk at the 2 million limit, we say, look at the difference in trending just $1 million in the 80s to what it would be today. And that comes to anywhere between 3 and 5 million, depending on how you're calculating that. So it's definitely something that is always changing, but we try to stay on top of as costs rise for everything. Auto liability, workers' compensation, those are where you'll still see in the $1 million range, but the commercial general liability, we definitely want to see that at a higher limit. Moving on to the next slide, we look at other insurance specifications as well, such as professional liability or errors and omissions. Builder's risk, which is course of construction. That one is a little more difficult, especially in rural areas. Um, Something that we talk with our members a lot about is builder's risk, course of construction, which is on site for buildings versus floaters, which is materials being installed. So that can get a little tricky. We always encourage people to reach out to us if they have questions when they're looking over contracts and those things come up. Other areas are like mentioned a lot before. Cyber liability, pollution liability is another one that's associated with a lot of construction projects. And a newer one that comes up more often is aviation, which is mostly associated with drones. We have another slide that's kind of like the other category. Workers' compensation, I'd say the most we discuss that is when we're talking about vendors, smaller vendors who don't have employees. So it's another area where we ask people to reach out to us because we do have a form that we can give them where we can waive the work comp requirement if there are no employees. Auto liability is required whenever, of course, vehicles are involved. And then we have specifications for claims made policies specifically for professional liability and E&O policies. So this is all stuff that may be slightly foreign to you, but will come up in contracts from time to time. And we just always say, reach out to us with questions, and they're all areas where we can give you more specific advice. Finally, when you're contracting with other public entities, we just make sure you know that self-insured and or members of the other pool are acceptable. So we have a little blurb that we send to our members when they're when they're working with agencies that maybe aren't as familiar with pooling, to kind of explain that we're not an insurance agency, how we're different, how we make sure that we are backed by good finances. And so we're familiar with that, and we always say you can accept that with other entities as well. And now we come to our third challenge of the day. We have a little multiple choice, and we're just looking for the statement that best reflects the relationship between insurance requirements and the value of the contract. So Nydia talked about this a little bit before. You can have the option of A, which is based solely on the contract's dollar value. B would be all contracts regardless of value. C is larger contracts requiring more time, or D, which is exposure to risk, not just the value. And I'm already seeing a few D's coming through. And yes, that's the best answer. We all obviously want to consider all factors, but regardless of the value, everything has to be evaluated for its associated risk. So very good. Everyone's a risk transfer expert.
Good job.
Okay, next moving on to insurance provisions. So we'll just go down the list of things that you want to look out for. The biggest thing we always look for is additional insured status by endorsement on general liability policies. So in addition to getting that certificate, we're always looking for an endorsement that lists your specific agency as additional insured. Sometimes you'll get one that's a blanket endorsement that just says if required by a contract, that works too, but you're always wanting to go that extra step of making sure you have that endorsement, not just a certificate of insurance. Vendor's insurance coverage is primary. We always like to recommend that you make sure that there's something in your provisions saying that the insurance carried by the other party is the primary. So that's another thing that can be endorsed on the policy that we like to look for. Another common provision is that any deductibles and self-insured retentions must be declared. So we want to know up front, right, if there is any cost to the contractor outside of their insurance, and then evaluate if we want to move forward. Notice of cancellation. These are all different provisions that you're going to look out for, that Nydia and I look out for every time we review a contract on your behalf. Same thing with work comp. It's great to have a work comp certificate showing that they have workers' comp coverage. It's even better to have a waiver of subrogation that says they won't come back and ask your entity for coverage if a claim arises. So we're always thinking about not just did we tick all the boxes, but if something happens, what happens on the other side of that? If a claim arises, is there specific language we need to look for in the endorsement and on the waiver? Yes, we have lots of samples. We have a whole risk transfer part of our website that Nydia is going to take you on a tour of in a couple slides. And she'll show you a lot of great examples and resources that we have. Sure. And then the per project aggregate. We have a lot of tongue twisters in this presentation. The per project aggregate endorsement or the aggregate limit needs to be double the per occurrence limit. So that just means when you're looking at those limits, like we were talking about earlier, the 2 and the 4, you want to see 2 million per occurrence and 4 million in the aggregate. And that's kind of the standard that we're looking for in most contracts. Again, when Nydia shows you a tour of all of our resources, you'll see that for different types of contracts, there are different levels that we recommend. And following with that, we have recommendations also based on the AM Best rating of the insurer that's providing the coverage. So AM Best rating is a rating of the financial strength of the carrier, the insurance carrier, to make sure that if you do have a claim, that we're sure that those claims are going to be paid out, right? So not only do we want to make sure we have all the proper documentation, but that the insurance provided on behalf of your contractor is backed by the money to pay the claims. AM Best is an industry standard and has been for years. It comes along with a letter and a number, and we're looking for certain levels of rating. So we look for at least an what's that Roman numeral? Yeah, I'm like
7.
But there are different levels that we list in all of our source materials as well. So if you ever have a question, it's free to make an account on the AM Best website. We go there all the time and just look up the company and make sure that they're AM Best rated. And here we come to challenge number 4. This one is more of a what would you do, so everyone can just chime in. We have a water district contracting with a major firm for a remodeling project. If the contractor provides the certificate, endorsements, and everything you've asked, but the AM Best rating shows B+7 for the carrier, what would you do?
Chat in. Anyone? Very good. The carrier is the insurance company, the general liability insurance company. So the insurance company is rated B+, not A. So somebody did say they would require a different insurance carrier, right? And that's correct.
A couple of those responses.
Yeah. You would just not accept that coverage. So the contractor would either have to go out and get different coverage, or the district has to choose a different contractor.
Right.
Right there. Tell them the requirements and have them make changes before accepting and signing the contract. Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
So this
All
is the
right.
next.
Well, I've
Yeah.
hyped it up a lot, and now we've come to the part where we go on the tour. I don't know, Nydia, if you want to take a break now or after the tour. Um,
Hey, what time is it? You know what? We could take a break now if we don't mind. Um, let's do a 5 minute break. Shelby, do I stop sharing?
Stop sharing if you'd like. Yes. We'll take a five
Okay,
minute break and then we'll rejoin at 11:01. Thank you
great.
all.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 11:01 a.m.
Great.
Thank you all for rejoining, and we can continue the presentation. There is a question in the chat. If we have a minute to answer, that would be wonderful. Let's see, from Jeffrey. Can you share how builder's risk might be applicable to a flood protection channel improvement project, which deals primarily with soil and rocks? The long one.
That's a good one. I've not been asked that before. That's interesting because there's not really a lot of material other than the rocks, right, that you're going to be installing. So other than protecting the contractor's equipment, they do need to have equipment. That would be under, a floater or a builder's risk, or if the agency or the contractor would have just property insurance on their equipment. Part of your risk assessment is, what if that equipment gets lost or stolen or damaged? Is the contractor going to be able to continue your job? So you would want to have at least property coverage on the contractor's equipment. So yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, and it's a great example of how every situation is evaluated differently, right?
Yes, yes. Good question.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, we can begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I am going to go into our website tour. I have our ACWA JPIA link. Let's see if it works. You're seeing my screen. Well, it might work. If it doesn't, I have it open. There we go. Okay, I have
It
it
is
open.
loading.
Okay, so we have a plethora of resources on our website, and specifically for risk transfer, it is under what we call services. So if you go into services right here, there's a risk transfer tab, and we can click on that. And for most of the documents in here, you may not need a password. If you do, I'd be glad to share that with you on the chat in a little bit. We can do that, but this is where we have most of our resources. So in the insurance requirements tab, remember I said we did all of the work for you. We've done a lot of the work for you. We have sample models that you can use right here, recommended insurance requirements and indemnification clauses by type of activity outsourced. So if it's service provider, professional services, design professional, leases, there's many, contractors, there's the drones, facilities use, and encroachment permits. So we have the model agreements right here for you that you can download. I'll download the construction contract because that one is the most risky, right? The biggest exposure. And so you can take a look at it. It's going to download, but
Nydia, while you're doing that,
yes.
I think the person who asked that last question was not online yet, so maybe we can talk about that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we can leave it for the end. How's that? We will reiterate our answer on that one at the end. But I did want to go back to the little chart here. I call this my chart. We have the endorsement numbers right here, which will correspond to each of the agreements. So the endorsements numbers are the insurance service office numbers that are assigned for the additional insured endorsements. So I have the numbers here. We used to link the PDFs here, but we cannot list those on our website anymore. We cannot have the PDF examples. That's why I included them in the job aid. So I'll also show you the job aid later so that you can see where these endorsements are. But I did download that Model 5 construction contract and it went into my downloads. So once I open it, you can see that I'll have to move it over. Here it is. Right, you're seeing that? You can see that it's very simple. We've given you what the best recommended indemnification language. Remember the three parts of the stool that's holding up our risk transfer processes is indemnification language, insurance requirements, limits of insurance, and then a written contract. This needs to be included in your written contract. And within the written contract, we recommend that you use all of this insurance lingo because after all, we want to make sure that the carrier, the contractor's carrier, knows what you mean. You mean to say that you are requiring the commercial general liability insurance service office number CG0001. So whenever I help review agreements for members, I always look for these ISO numbers, and they're all over. That's why I'm trying to, kind of highlight them as we go. You're seeing my highlights, right? So there's many insurance service office numbers, and we're going to try to give you an overview of these numbers, and the most important ones that you need are these, the additional insured. And in that verifications webinar that we're going to do later on this year, we will also dive even deeper into these forms and help you find keywords in those forms when you're verifying coverage. But this is, like I said, the Model 5 construction contract that you can, feel free to use. Feel free to run this by your legal counsel and let us know. We do partner. Let us know if legal counsel says, hey, that's not valid anymore, or let's use different language. We're constantly reviewing and updating these. So that's the models. That's mainly what members call about is how do you have an example? Which model do I use? But if you want to learn more, there are more handouts right here, and some of this is included in your handout. Here's the basics for risk transfer. It's kind of a little, 7-pager quick read that you can take a look at and know the importance of risk transfer. And then a deeper dive here is the insurance requirements in contracts. And earlier I went into it. I have it here. This is what we call the Alliant Manual. It's produced by Alliant, a large insurance brokerage firm that has provided this specifically for public entities. So it really is kind of like Amber said earlier, the Bible of risk transfer. And you can download it here. It's like, I don't know, 200 pages. And you can do word search. We use it all the time. We do word searches. What does it say about course of construction? What does it say about insurance? But really what we have available on the website here with the checklist and the models really is kind of a easier bite of risk transfer that you can use readily. And like I said, here's the checklist for verification, and we can get into that in the next webinar. And then I do have some samples here, sample forms for waivers if you're having tours or facilities use. These are here. And then new this year is this sample facilities use policy. So if you don't have a policy right now that, for your to rent out or to let the public use your facilities, feel free to use this as a model. There's an application sample. Our risk control department actually came up with these. It's very handy. And so there's other samples for you here. So the main one that I want you to make sure that you use is let me get over there, right here. The job aid that we provided for you here is ready for you to set side by side with your when you're verifying coverage. So this is a great little job aid to have on your desktop or print it out if you want to kill a tree. It's not too bad. It's 22 pages, but this has the basics: why we're doing risk transfer, why we want to get on the same page, because you're a partner with the JPIA. We want to support you and provide indemnification and defense if you need it. So it kind of shows you where where risk transfer, it starts with the bid process, right? We want you to show your contractors exactly what the specifics of the job is. You prepare the contract with the indemnification and requirements. They provide you with the insurance documents. You review it, and then you can sign your contract. If at the review you're not satisfied, you could always go back and say, no, you need to show me more as far as paperwork is concerned, verification. And then finally, your work can begin. So we've developed this little chart just to let you know, don't start your job before you gather your information. Don't start the job before you sign the contract, right? Believe me, it's crazy. Members out there have done that stuff, and then we get in trouble. So here in the job aid, I've provided a certificate of liability sample. Let me see if I can get it a little bit bigger. It has little notes for you in case you just never have picked up a certificate of coverage. It's here for you to take a look and see what should be in each of these columns. And then we provided you a checklist. And it goes along with that sample certificate of coverage. See these reference points right here, number 4? If you flip back to the certificate, number 4 says that's the insured. That should be your contractor's name listed there. So it kind of walks you through. It's very, I hope it's very elemental, a checklist procedure that you can check. Yes, it's the name of the contractor matches what's in the insurance. So this is something that we get into more on that second part of risk transfer. I don't want to take too much time here, but we've developed these tools for you to use, to take to set side by side when you get those insurance documentation. And then the deeper dive is you look at each of the main 3. I call them the main 3: general liability. Oops, sorry. Okay, let's see. We will go back to the checklist here. The main 3: general liability, auto liability, workers' comp. Most of your contracts are going to have those 3 insurance provisions. And then, and things that you should be looking out for in each of those. And then if you have excess liability that is playing a role in there, there's some hints here in order to make sure that they match up with your contract. And then if you have other coverages like builder's risk or professional liability, we've given you some tips there. So now we get into the endorsements, and I think I'm jumping ahead. Let me go back to sharing my PowerPoint. Please feel free to
everyone so sorry, Nydia, that I entered the job aid packet into the chat, and then of course everyone will be receiving a copy of the handouts probably within the next day or so from myself. So please look forward to that email. I just want to make sure so everyone receives a copy. So thank you.
I think you sent it out already, Shelby. You just
did prior, yes. So we sent a few emails prior this week. We want to make sure you get all your resources that you need. But this email will include the recording for today's session and then those materials as well, because I know some folks are joining in from groups. So we want to make sure you have all of what you need. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, I was getting a little ahead of myself. We went back to the verification. Now that you've chosen the vendor and you're awarded the bid and you've negotiated the language in your contract and signed it, now you get the certificates of coverage plus the applicable endorsements. And we emphasize plus. Make sure you're just not not just the certificate. This is the certificate. I kind of already showed it to you in the job aid. It's great. It's where we start because it shows what limits are available, that make sure that the contractor is the one that's listed, that it shows the certificate of coverage is with the district's name at the bottom here where it says certificate. However, it's not enough. It's a good place to start. There's a provision within it. I know you can't really see it, but under here, it says this certificate is for information purposes only and does not confer any rights to the certificate holder. That means that it's just showing, it's like the cab card in your vehicle that says that you have auto liability insurance. It's good that you have insurance, but we need to make sure that the contractor actually tells their insurance company that the district wants rights on their policy, and that's called an endorsement. So we want to have additional insured rights on the policy, especially, well, with all your contracts, but especially with construction. And this is where I mentioned that we want to make sure we use the insurance language, the insurance service office language. These numbers, the CG means commercial general liability. 2010 means it's an additional insured endorsement. And the last four digits, 1185 here, is the month and year that these were created. So yes, we want the best endorsement is what we refer to as the 1185. It added the additional insured, so the district as a additional insured on that policy, giving them all the rights to be able to be defended by the insurance company and file claims on that insurance for this particular project. So that form is over 40 some years old. And now we can accept the ones that are dated October of 2001, this one, the CG 2010. However, because the insurance companies have modified these endorsements, we have to have two to be equivalent to the 1185. So the two that we look for are the CG 2010-1001 ongoing operations and the CG 2010-37-1001. That means completed operations. So we have to have two endorsements. Something to keep in mind when you're looking at these endorsements is the newer the endorsement, the less coverage to the agency. So if you have a very risky project, a big construction project, press for those older forms. Sometimes, and I know it's very rare, contractors can purchase the 1185 coverage, but if they give you others, it's okay. It's okay to accept the versions that are 1001 and or now 2004 or 2013, or even now there's a 2019. So those are not the preferred, but it's still okay to accept those, but push for the older forms. And I think I have that on the other one too. So more additional insured endorsements, like I said, not all vendors are the same, right? If you're doing facilities rentals, you can have a CG 2012. These are all insurance standard endorsements. So I will show you in the job aid the different ones. So if you have a facilities rental and for some reason they can't provide coverage, call us because we do accommodate or facilitate what's called a special event liability policy that the agency would purchase on behalf of that third party that's renting the facility. Say, I don't know, the Girl Scouts or someone wanting to use your boardroom to, I don't know, do a toy drive. They could purchase a coverage for that one-day event. So that, because the district needs to be protected, right? There's still risk involved in even just renting your facility. Let's see what else we have here. Additional insured acceptable. Like I said, we want the older forms before 2004 because they offer better protection. right? For construction and roads and infrastructure, please push for the older forms. And for most contracts, so those service contracts that you are doing, it's okay to have just the products or completed operations. Actually, that doesn't apply. So you know what? I need to change my my slide here. For most contracts, you don't have a completed operations endorsement. So I apologize. I just caught that. So here we go. I'm throwing a bunch of numbers at you. Here's a challenge for you. Which of the following is an argument in favor of requiring additional insured status? Does it guarantee the agency notice of cancellation on the policy? B, is the insured obligated to pay for the defense of the additional insured? C, additional insureds are automatically provided a copy of the policy? Or D, it provides the agency with a separate limit of coverage?
Okay. I am
So who,
seeing 1B so far, a D in the chat, 1B and 1D. Let's see.
okay.
Another D. I'm seeing more Ds. Thank you all. Yep, a lot more Ds.
Okay.
Quite a few. There we are. Thank you all. Wonderful. Okay.
Let me get back to my PowerPoint here. Okay, the actual answer is B. So whoever answered B, you're right. The insurer
Sure.
is obligated to pay for a
Pay
defense of
for a
the
defense.
additional insured. So unfortunately, a lot of people said D. It provides the agency with a separate limit of coverage. That is not what the additional insured will do. That is a different endorsement, but so that's a good answer, but it's not the best answer. The best answer is B. The additional insured endorsement actually obligates the insurer to pay for the defense of the agency and then actually the settlement, right? So it's important to have that additional insured endorsement. So key points here is make sure that you inform your bidders of the indemnification and insurance requirements at the bid specs. Because that way they know upfront what they are supposed to provide to do business with you. Two, the insurance must match the contract requirements. That's our verification. And like I said, we will have another webinar this year to go over verification of coverage because I know I threw a lot of numbers at you this time. We will dive more deeply in that webinar. Again, the contract value has no impact on the exposure to the district. Bad things can happen even with the smallest of contracts. And be persistent. Don't let the job start without the documents being in place. Fight the good fight. I tell all my members all the time, you're not the only one out there having to negotiate or go back and forth with a contractor or their broker. Sometimes the brokers get involved. You are the agency employing these contractors. They are willing to work with you. And yes, we want to be fair with what we're asking them to provide, but they do need to provide it, and they will provide it. They'll come up to the challenge. Like I said, I've been on the other side, being a broker for contractors, and everyone wants to do the right thing. And if you explain that to your contractors, hey, I have an obligation to require these documents and make sure that they're on file. We also have an obligation to continue to ask for these documents once the insurance expires, right? And then when the job is finished, especially for construction contracts, we do want you to have in your contract that the contractor must carry this coverage for 5 years after the project is completed. and actually up to 10 years after the project is completed, because you might have latent defects that happen after the project is done that you could go back to the contractor and say, hey, you installed this incorrectly and now it caused another loss. So here is another challenge for you. This is challenge number 6. You have been informed that a painting service contract is in process of being executed and work will begin tomorrow. You will not have the certificate nor the endorsements prior to the commencement of the job. What do you do? This one should be pretty easy.
Wait, I'm seeing wait.
Yeah,
Halt
halt the
the
job.
job, wait.
Good. Stop the work order. Excellent. Good, that's it. You need to stop and not let this project start. So again, here's the verification of compliance. So require acceptable proof of insurance prior to the start of the job. If the certificates or endorsements are not accurate, the insurer is not required to conform. So always require the endorsements. Remember, you need at least 2, 3, 4 pages with all of your contracts because there's different endorsements, and I can show you where those are in the job aid. For major projects, obtain a copy of the insurance policy. So yeah, we do have some members that have to do that. A lot of the time we ask you to get a declaration page and maybe a schedule of forms. But if you ask for the full policy, you're going to have it there. And yeah, you can read it. It'll put you to sleep. We are working on some AI tools. We're looking for AI tools to assist you better in reviewing contracts and reviewing insurance verifications and policies. So hang in there. We're looking into things for you. We're hoping that the JPIA will make available some of those AI tools for you. But in the meantime, Amber and I are constantly on the phone and via email, looking at endorsements and helping you and teaching, hopefully, for you to be able to conquer these verifications. So two last real life examples of good and poor risk transfer claims that have come through the JPIA. One first was a success. We had a sewer rehabilitation project. Some of our agencies do water and sewer. And this particular agency had 20 miles of gravity sewer mains that had reached their 50-year design life. All the stuff that I get to learn here. But they were rehabilitating all of their sewer, and the project was going to be 6 months, so it's a huge project, over $5 million in value, so large, right? Lots of risk because they're out there, as you can see this guy digging and putting in new pipelines. And during the project, unfortunately, the contractor had 2 separate sewer overflow incidents. So that's pretty gross. In a private residence and a commercial business. So 2 different incidences in which the contractor actually, it says it occurred upstream from the contractor's bypass pumping operations. So it was definitely their fault, the contractor. And so the contractor insurance did pick up the defense and indemnification of the district, especially because the contract had very, very specific indemnity language that said you're going to be responsible for any spills that happen. So the JPIA actually paid under $500 for each of those claims, and the district got indemnified. So there was no ramifications after that. So make sure, like I said, to have your documents well filed and ready in case that there's a claim. So one of the opportunities for improvement, here's a construction project that did not provide indemnification to the district or to the JPIA, because obviously the JPIA is backing the district. This is a construction project that an accident resulted for the contractor's employee. So you think, oh, no big deal, it's workers' comp, and they will go ahead and provide all of the medical care and help for this employee. Well, as it turns out, it was a very weird Murphy's Law glitch within the contract. Apparently, this contractor did work at several different locations for the agency. And because the location where the employee got injured was not listed in the contract, the district became legally liable for the injury of this employee. In other words, the insurer for the contractor did not provide full indemnification and defense of the agency for this. Obviously, it was a bad injury. And so the JPIA ended up paying like $3 million on this particular injury. So things happen. We know that things happen. And like I said, that's why we're partners. We're backing you up by providing the coverage, but we all need to get on the same page. So bottom line is we want you to have everything documented in your files. It doesn't have to be paper. It can be electronic files, and a diary to show that you are following up with the ones that are ongoing operations or completed projects, especially construction. So we're here for you. We want to make sure we're helping you. And we're recommending some resources here. Of course, like I said, District Legal Counsel is always at the top of the list. They are the ones that are going to help you make some of these decisions and help you with the indemnification language and your contracts. I showed you the risk transfer tools. There's the username and password. So if any of those documents on the website require a username and password, here it is. And of course, like I said, Amber and I are very much available to answer questions. If you send an email to the member services mailbox, we do both see those, and we've divided up, divide and conquer, and we help. We also have another colleague starting on Monday, so we will have more help and resources for you. Again, the Alliant Manual is our Bible, and we use that to help our members to model contracts. And then, of course, AM Best is the company that rates or ranks insurance companies' financial strength. So I've given you all of these links that when you get the PDF of the slides, then you can click all the links available to you. So now we're ready for questions and answers. Let's open it up. And here's our contact information. Let's open up the questions and answers. You can either chat it in, or if you have one that is more convoluted, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. We have about 25 minutes to answer questions. I think we said we were going to go back and answer that question regarding the builder's risk, right?
We were, and I have it pulled up right here. I believe this was from Jeffrey, and it states, can you share how builder's risk might be applicable to a flood protection channel improvement project, which deals primarily with soil and rocks?
Yes. So what I had said before is that project is, we want to take each project for what it individually, right? We're not going to do a blanket, oh, you need builder's risk. However, there is at that type of a project, the risk is more of the contractor's equipment breaking down or being lost, that if they don't replace that equipment, then they may not be able to finish the job, right? So this particular contract wouldn't completely have a builder's risk policy, but it may require a property coverage for the contractor's equipment. Because an installation floater or a builder's risk focuses more on the assets there. And, obviously we're not going to try to replace rocks. There's not going to be a loss potential for the rocks, hopefully. Is that how we answered it before, Amber? Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that was pretty in line with what we said. A
Okay,
little more
thanks for
detail.
So Nydia, thanks for asking it. This is Jeff Tang from Zone 7, and you and I have interacted in the past.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we had this on one of our contracts and didn't realize that um, it might not be necessary in our case because, like I said, we don't deal with building structures, but isn't the loss of equipment covered under something else? I mean,
Well, like I said,
the contractor will have an obligation to complete the project, whether or not they have a loss of equipment that, and if they do not complete it within their, certain time frame, then they've got the liquidated damages. So why would we need to go and have them insure, under builder's risk, their equipment?
it doesn't necessarily have to be under builder's risk, but it could be a property requirement, right? Just evidence that they have a backup plan in case their equipment goes, a large fire goes through and their equipment is gone. Do they have a backup plan? So remember that insurance provides the financial backing. So if they have a loss, the property insurance would provide them some kind of capital in order to go out and purchase more equipment or rent equipment. So if you
Sure.
don't have that, then the worst case scenario is the contractor is going to say, well, I can't afford to go out and get new equipment. If you want me to finish the job, pay me some more money so I can go out and get the equipment. So you're kind of stuck. So it's the best practice.
So I guess because this language was in the contract, our agency is asking the contractor to provide that coverage. How do you go and explain to the contractor why it's necessary? What are they going to be getting that coverage to cover in our particular instance?
So you're going to ask them, what are you using to install this, right? They're installing the rocks and the grading and making sure that it's right to your specifications. Are they using equipment? If they are, then we want them to tell us, if you have a loss of that equipment, how do you expect to replace it so that you can finish my job? So the only way that you can ensure that is to have some kind of a financial backing. I mean, are they a large contractor that they have a pile of money sitting out somewhere and they will be bringing it on in the event that their equipment is lost?
Okay.
So now we make the recommendation for the best practices, right? But every scenario is different. And that's where we're not obligating you to do this. We're just letting you know this is the best practice. It may not be applicable. Maybe the agency wants to take on the risk that this contractor may not be able to replace their equipment. And so then you're willing to know that it's going to cost you more money to go out and get another contractor. Right? That is a business decision that you need to make. So if you tell me, Nydia, I think we're okay without this other insurance policy to back up the equipment that's being brought on, that's completely in your wheelhouse. You can make that decision. But like I said, if there's a loss that, I can't think of a scenario that would cause a loss that we would need that property other than the equipment being lost. So maybe in this one, yeah, you decided, Osborne can decide that we don't need it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that question has been posed to Osborne, and his recommendation has been to ask for the insurance. So
Okay.
I'm just having the issue of trying to explain to the contractor why it's necessary, and um, I would think that our contract with the contractor already covers what their responsibility is to provide um, completion of the project, whatever the case may be, um, whether they have insurance or not, they're still going to contracts, you know, um, holds them to being responsible to complete the work.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
We had a
Thank
couple
you.
other questions, right?
Yes, we have three other questions as of right now. First question I am seeing from Gabriella states, should we require insurance from agencies that request to use our facilities, even though we are not technically renting it?
Yes, absolutely. Even if there's no change of money, the fact that this other entity is on your premises, like we get a lot of requests for just parking lots for the fire districts. They want to practice putting out fires, and so they're using agencies' facilities. We do need them to at least sign the contract that says that they're going to indemnify and provide insurance in case that there's some kind of a loss at that facility while they're using it. So,
And Nydia,
yes,
I think it was on the presentation earlier when you were showing our sample forms, but it can be something as simple as having them do a facility use agreement and having those requirements in that little agreement. And it's pretty common. We do a lot of those on behalf of our members.
yes,
And it's, yeah, that liability of something happening on site and not wanting to get looped into a claim resulting from that.
yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nydia and Amber. Okay, next question states, is it recommended to require builder's risk coverage for any construction activities that would require heavy equipment or otherwise valuable equipment / materials? And this question is from Elliot.
Yes. Hi, Elliot. If it's construction and there's a structure that is being built or left behind, that's when we recommend the builder's risk coverage, the course of construction coverage. Because if there's a fire that sweeps through and your project is gone, the builder's risk is what's providing the financial backing for that project. The builder's risk also can include the contractor's equipment, like we were talking about with Jeff. Um, the contractor is using certain equipment, and if there's a loss to that equipment, they may not be able to finish the job. And then the builder's risk also has what's called in transit coverage. So that if you're bringing in assets that are going to be installed on that structure, that they would also have coverage during the time that they're in transit. It could be an accident on the middle of the street and all your windows are gone. So that's why we recommend builder's risk for any construction that is having an asset that's left behind. If there's no asset left behind, if when you install, like for example, pipeline, If you're installing pipeline and you're bringing in the big pipes and they're being put in, you would need what's called an installation floater, and that covers the material coming in transit, and then while it's being put in, and then it finishes once it's installed. That's why it's called an installation floater. And the installation floater also has coverage for the equipment of the contractor. I hope that answers the question. I see another question. I can read this one. How do you recommend would you recommend if we obtain insurance from delivery services such as fuel, parts, etc.? If so, what is it for UPS or FedEx? Great question. So we don't recommend that you get coverage for UPS or FedEx. That's not really a service that you are hiring, right? However, those that are delivering like fuel or gas, there's obviously a higher risk for delivering of gases or fuel. So definitely, yes, have an agreement with insurance and indemnification requirements, including pollution liability for those fuel or gas, because spills and things happen. So definitely we do need to have an agreement for those types of services, but not for UPS or FedEx or Amazon. Amber, do you have anything to add on that one?
I would just say, yeah, for companies like that that are just coming on site and you don't have control over it, you would just file a claim directly with that company, rather than having an agreement in place. Yeah.
So is that all the questions we have?
It is looking so. Here is one more question, just popped up. And Amanda said, thank you for answering the question. Yes, I see another question from Jeff that states, is an installation floater more appropriate for equipment versus the builder's risk? I've seen the language in some contracts, but not our current contract.
So there's actually a coverage that's called contractor's equipment coverage that may apply better. Jeff, you know what? I'll do some research for you and get back to you on email just to kind of solidify or kind of define what each of those coverages uh, include. So that way it'd be better suited than just off the top of my head.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nydia.
Uh-huh.
Jeff says thanks.
Okay.
Okay, great. Next question states, this is from Mariano. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. The question states, on the job aid section, page 7, section 12, the signatory needs, hold on, I'm scrolling up, needs be an agent or broker. What is the method to verify the appropriate person is approved to ensure the appropriate person signed it? It is job aid section page 7. Oh, sorry, job aid page 7, section 12.
Page 7, section
Page
12.
7,
Oh,
section
there we go.
12.
Yeah, so I
Yep,
have that on can you see it on my
we can.
okay. So page 7, section 12, authorized representative of the insurer should be an employee unless an agent or broker is specifically authorized to sign. I just make sure there's a signature in there. Was the question who should sign or how should we verify the signature?
Yes, let's see.
It's
Needs
usually
to
the
be an agent or
broker.
broker. Okay,
Yeah,
broker.
it's usually the
Got it.
broker that signs it or the agent. As long as you have a signature, the broker's name is way up here on number 1 where it says producer. So someone from that producer needs to make sure they sign. Just don't accept it with no signature.
Okay. And then I think another part of the question is what method to verify the appropriate person is approved to ensure that the appropriate person signed it. And I apologize if you already stated that. That looks
Yeah.
like the end of the question. Okay,
I mean, I
good to go.
guess you could verify if you really wanted to, you could make sure on the state website that they have their broker's license
There you go.
on the insurance website, but we don't typically make that a practice. That would be going the extra mile.
Yes. I mean,
Wonderful.
if you feel like the certificate looks bogus and just doesn't make
Yes.
sense, I do that. I go on to the California Insurance website and verify that that broker is real.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you both. Okay. Mariano says thank you for answering the question. Next question. Oh, Elliot says, will you CC me on the email to Jeff? Sounds like we have a lot of similar questions.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem.
I made us a note for zone 7.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay. Let's see. Next question states, and this is from Sophie. Should we require contractors' pollution liability insurance if the project involves sanitary sewer pipe replacement and an abandoned asbestos pipe is within the project limits, even though the pipe is not owned by the agency, but still poses a potential pollution hazard? I think it's yes, but just want verification. Thank you.
Go for it, Amber.
Yes. We usually have pollution as an aspect of any sort of construction contract. But specifically, if you are aware of an exposure, that's a great time to make sure that it's included. Conversely, if we have people reach out to us and say, I know for a fact there's no exposure, then we always say what Nydia was saying earlier. Ultimately, it's up to the district to make that decision and evaluate based on the level of risk. But I think that's asbestos pipe being involved somewhere where you're doing work underground is a great example of a time to include it.
Yes. And that reminds me, and I brought up the Model 5 construction contract again. I forgot to mention that our risk control department has actually collaborated with us to include safety provisions. This isn't meant to cover all, but these are just some of the things that they've run into and they would like to see in the agreements. So, a lot of this, when I hear asbestos, I think employees and digging it up and injury. And so it reminded me of the safety language that we recommend, that you at least review and make sure that somewhere in your contract there's some kind of safety models.
Wonderful. Thank you. Not
Okay.
seeing any other questions in the chat as of right now. Oh, sorry. One question popped up from Amanda. Do you recommend any good software for keeping track of insurances?
Great question, Amanda. I have a few companies that our agencies have used, so I can send that out to you. We don't have experience specific to one software company versus another, but like I said, we're working on it. We are considering making available. I don't know if we're going to be purchasing it or what we can do for our members, but we do have some companies that have approached us that have AI components that can help. So yeah, hang in there. What we can do is when we send out the final email, Shelby, we can include, these questions that were asked, and I'll include the references. I think I have at least 2, if not 3 companies that do help keep track of contracts and insurance. And if anybody out there is using a company that they really like, please share with us. We're all a team. And so let's work together. If you have success with I don't know, ebix, or I think there's one that's called BCS. Please let us know if you're using it, or that way we know we have some references. And if you'd be willing to share your experiences, that would be great. I've always thought that we could do some kind of a risk transfer forum where we can all collaborate and send questions and answers. We've yet to create that, but change is coming and it's exciting. And so if we can all work together, let's do that. So thank you all for taking the time. This was a whole 2 hours. I can't believe it. It it was so fun.
Thank you so much,
Totally.
Nydia. Yes. Thank you all. Um, let's see. Yes, Mariano says, can I get a list of the softwares as well? We will make sure to include that in the final email, which will include the recording and handouts from today's presentation. I want to just note a quick one link before we end today's session. I am posting into the chat the training survey. If you all can please take a few minutes. Your great feedback is greatly appreciated. Thank you all. Wonderful. Thank you all. Okay. Well, thank you all and have a great remainder of your Thursday. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.